Welcome back, everyone, to the Natty 19 Behind the Screen Volume 13. I'm Jonathan Marshall, and I'm joined with Charles Marshall. You know him as Quincy. Also, the lovely Christy Lee Marshall. You know her as Irme.
Hello.
And we've got a quick one tonight in comparison to our previous ones that have been trying to play catch up with all those other episodes. But like we promised, we're going to be trying to get these out a lot quicker. This way we don't have to have our behind the screen episodes longer than our actual episodes. So let's...
To be fair, we do cover multiple episodes.
And sometimes
Absolutely.
subjects outside of the episodes.
True.
That's right.
Sometimes we're just talking about ourselves.
It's my favorite subject.
All right, so for the people listening and for those few who are watching, what are we going to be covering tonight?
Okay, so tonight we will be covering episodes 44 and 45. 44 is pretty awesome, and it opens pretty awesome because for the first time, we meet Roz Nasi,
Oh, yes.
which is pretty awesome.
Is he our villain? Is he like our major
A villain,
He's a
right?
villain.
I think we don't know who.
It's hard
I
to
think
say.
we were dealing with a few villains here. We don't know which one's
Kinda
like
stumbling through the jungle.
the worst of them all.
It's a bit of a melting pot,
Yeah.
so to speak. But I just wanted to cut in real quick before we get to the whole Roz Nasi bit. I thought that just having Zavril, I don't want to say on screen because he wasn't on screen, but having so much of Zavril was a nice breath of fresh air. I feel like even throughout this entire process, Zavril's kind of been the quiet one. So this was a great opportunity to finally get Zavril in the spotlight for a little while, even though he was still kind of quiet during it.
I'm just gonna stay quiet.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer. But still, it was cool. I liked it, and I had a good time. With that. But yeah, if you want to cut right to the Roz Nasi bit, there was nothing. Well, it was pretty much just Zaves getting brought to Roz Nasi. Right?
Yes, yeah.
Before then.
So I thought some things were really cool about Roz Nasi. It could be because my character Irme has had a vision of Roz Nasi, maybe a connection or something. But as far as the villains go thus far, I definitely like Roz Nasi more than I like Valindra. We don't really know what Valindra's cause is yet, and Roz Nasi's seems to be driven by something, some revenge or something maybe sad or dark that happened in his past, and I think that makes a villain.
Yeah, you feel that there's a backstory there.
Yeah. And we also find out that he's bald, and I wasn't expecting that.
Don't overlook us bald villains.
I was like, he's bald?
Wait till you find out Quincy's true motives.
I've got a good idea here, and I know it won't really help the listeners at home, but for those few watching, how about we raise a picture of Roz Nasi? And
Absolutely,
maybe
yes.
if our listeners aren't driving or doing anything, they can raise a picture as well. But there you go. I just put them up on the screen there for you guys to see.
Can we just right there?
No, we're gonna. Maybe I'll just replace the whole.
Start it here. and
Yeah,
move
just
it.
our audio over
I'll
the
just
Move it
photo.
around with my hand.
I'm just gonna probably replace our image with this image.
Yep, okay.
But yeah, so yeah, he is definitely bald. You see his blood-stained bandages. He's clearly torn. He's been
And-
around the block.
And this is after his ceremony to become a Yuan-ti.
That's right. This is
I
the
like
current
that snake body.
Yep.
Ugh.
It's a good artist rendition.
Yep. This is the current Roz Nasi right here.
Do we have a photo of Roz Nasi in all of his splendor before this?
No.
No, interesting.
Nope. That was not presented to me. His backstory is more so in text.
Yep.
Up until all the imagery you're going to see, or that was presented to me anyway, is the current what you'd see. Probably for player handouts and stuff like that when you do encounter him. That's probably why they, give these pictures and not him 100 years ago, right? Yep. But yeah, one thing you'll notice is the sword.
I was just looking at that. Yep. I actually like that sword, but I was wondering how the balance would feel with it narrowing the way it does.
Well, if you remember the way I described it, so I actually changed it. I changed the design of his sword to make it a little bit more intimidating in our story. Instead of just like a straight long sword like that, I kind of made it a curved, almost a scimitar, but etched out and with kind of like flames, steel. All steel.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you'll find out why I did that later on if you ever fight this guy. No, but all right.
I think we should work for him.
He looks like a nice guy.
You want to. So yeah, we find out, we meet Ras Nsi. He's bald. And he says a couple of things that I think are interesting. One of the things that I heard was that he's building a true dynasty. He doesn't want to bring about the end of the world. Just a couple notes on him to keep in mind when we're moving forward, I thought.
There are many details in here that if paid attention and if remembered, you guys can use these details to your advantage. I'll give you that. I made sure to lay out some hints, if you will.
Weaknesses or
personality traits, just conditions. I put some hints in there, and if you paid attention, should the situation arise, you'd be able to use this information as leverage.
Episode 44?
Yeah, this is episode 44.
So re-listen to episode 44. All right.
Absolutely.
So in this, Zavril essentially doesn't give much information to the Yuan-ti. He does give up Valindra's name, which immediately brought to mind for me Valindra versus Ras Nsi,
Right.
If these two start having to go at it, which is interesting because Valindra being a necromancer and Ras Nsi being
fallen paladin.
A fallen paladin.
I don't know what you'd call him.
Strong ties to the undead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at some point, he did control an army of undead in his past life.
I'm kind of feeling Valindra is not even in the same league.
Yeah, you think so?
That's my impression.
Yeah?
I don't know.
I
Looks
think-
can be deceiving, but...
Yeah, that's how I've always... that's how I felt about Valindra from the beginning. When we were up there and, I didn't like her immediately.
But Ras Nsi has lore and ancient history and legends.
I think Valindra does too, just
Maybe,
not
but
in this.
our party hasn't heard it.
Yeah, our party hasn't heard it. So in game we haven't heard it, and I also think within this storyline or this adventure path, we don't really hear it. But I think she's a well-known character.
Oh, she's definitely got lore. I mean, she's got. If you're talking outside of this story, Valindra is definitely. She's packing heat. Sure.
Valindra's got lore for days.
Yeah.
Well, I think my impression of Ras Nsi is there's some borderline immortality,
Yeah.
I mean, how many hundreds of years has he been around?
At least.
Yeah, in that
At
photo,
least
he's like
130.
he's like practically
130.
mummified.
At least, right? According to what your characters know, anyway.
Okay, maybe
And that
not
puts
quite
him
as
at,
ancient
that
as
puts
I
him at
thought.
30 years old, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Unless he was older than that then, or unless he was younger, and he could have been a.
All right, so not quite as ancient as I had
Right.
thought. I mean, elves live longer than that.
Right. Well, Mesro, that whole calamity at Mesro was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong on this, but I thought the spell plague was that recent as well.
It was. Yep.
Yeah, so and because I seem to remember the lore being tied, like a lot of people, when Mesro disappeared, they blamed the spell plague. So,
All right, wow, that feels like more recent history in game,
yep.
and for some reason my mind just goes to like ancient history. You know, when I think
here.
about it,
When
like
you think about the spell plague, same here. I think about the spell plague, or I hear about it, and I'm like, oh, that must have been 1,000 years ago. You know,
right, I'm over here thinking like ancient Greeks and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but it's really It's really like flappers and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Roaring Twenties.
yeah. It's really just like your great grandparents, you know.
Right.
The something that always keeps that in the forefront of my mind is Irame's background. Irame's people moved planes during the spell plague, so
How
it's
old is Irame?
easy for me to keep that in mind. Irame is young. She's her because the way elves age, she's her actual age or within that realm.
Okay.
She hasn't gotten to the point where she's aging yet looks considerably younger.
Yep.
She's a young high elf. Irame's people are not from the Sword Coast. They're not from this plane even. They're from the Feywild. So, and they've only been on this plane for 100 and something years.
Right.
So it's easy for me to remember because Irame, because elves live so long, has family that made that transition.
Right. It's part of your. It's part of your family's like story.
Yep.
So when you're sitting around at the holidays and stuff, there are probably people talking about it.
Remember when we killed scores of humans on that island? We move from Zavril back to the main party. And when we do that, John has us roll a check, and Irame spots the red wizards.
Yeah.
She spots them out over the lava pit on the pillar or butte,
Yep.
leaving a shrine.
Presumably victorious.
Yes, yeah. I think that was a cue that the race is on. We are now in a race against time, which I think is something to consider going forward as our group. I think our group likes to explore everything.
At the same time, you don't want to rush, right? Because it's only going to get more dangerous going forward, and you guys know that. You know what I mean? So it's going to be tricky, and I think that's probably why they did this, is because it's like now you're kind of in the frying pan, right? And you know it. The difficulty ramped up, and now all of a sudden you're pressed for time as well. So I think it's made to build anxiety.
Well, we can't rush, but at the same time, we can't dally. You know,
course,
we can't
right.
take 3 rests a day.
Well,
And,
there's going to be consequences. You can, but there's going to be consequences either way, right? I mean, I think that's the built-in. You know, if you play it safe and take your time, you'll have an easier time in combats and such. But you'll lose. You'll lose to the Red Wizards ultimately. And if you go the other way, you might die during a combat because you were rushing to beat the Red Wizards. Right, so there's going to be consequences. It'll be interesting to watch just how fine of a line you guys can skate.
I think we should just follow the Red Wizards and study them and their weaknesses and their techniques, and not even fuck with any of the temples, and then just jump those assholes
And steal all their cubes.
Steal all the cubes.
I think we should too. We could use Akramos as our inn.
Yeah.
So there's also the Yuan-Ti that are in Omu. We don't know to what end necessarily now, as Rosnasi has not shown his hand but told us what he doesn't want, and that's to end the world. So
And even then, he's a Yuan-Ti now. So for all intents and purposes, the Yuan-Ti, they'll tell you anything, you know. So it's tough. It's a tough call. That whole scene with him, you really got to take it with a grain of salt, you know.
Well, if I've learned anything from movies, the villains tell you their plan. Right? So he's obviously telling us the truth.
Obviously. He's a snake man. Why would he lie?
Yeah. But the Yuan-Ti and Rosnasi, we know, aren't 100% lockstep.
Yes.
You know, there are factions.
I can't help but think, and this could be wrong, but that the Yuan-Ti are a way for Rosnasi to achieve what he wants to achieve, not necessarily rising in the ranks of the Yuan-Ti is what he wants.
No.
He just knows that doing that will fulfill his
Exactly.
long-term goal.
Exactly, and that's a good testament to that's how you should be reading all these dialogues with him, is between the lines, you know. What he says, you can take it or leave it, but it's those cues you want to piece together what like you would with any Yuanti. I've been unfortunate enough to have an ex-girlfriend who did nothing but lie. And that's what I equate the Yuanti to. You
I
just
think a lot of people have had that person in their life.
Yeah, you learn to read between
they're
lies.
telling you stuff and you're not even listening. You're just you're listening to something else.
You know the
entirely.
words.
Yeah.
You know the words are bullshit.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
you're listening to their motive.
yeah, yeah.
This invisible thing that you know
Yeah.
is between the words,
Yeah.
under the
Exactly.
words.
Yep.
You can decipher their entire night
Right.
from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, going forward, so that's all I wanted to say on it is that's I think you've got the right idea.
So Ras Nasi is just a user, and the Yuanti's a step along the way to his path to glory.
Ugh, he had to look like a snake though. That sucks.
Small price to pay for a dynasty.
Mm.
I'd look like a snake if I had a dynasty named after me. Like Ramses and Chuck. During the era of
The Chuck dynasty.
Yeah, the Chuck dynasty.
Everybody wore horned helmets.
The blue barbarians.
The blue barbarians swept across the lands.
Moving on in the episode, Irame has another vision.
Yeah.
This time of Ras Nasi at Taguda Village.
Mm-hmm.
Anything about that?
As far as visions go, that was so far anyway. There's only been 2.
Yep.
That was definitely my favorite of the 2. I liked the tie to Taguda Village.
Bringing that back around is always good.
Yeah, and the setting that I painted for it was more so what I was hoping to see. Most of the time I prep a scene to how I think you guys want to see it or how it'll affect you guys, but I think that vision was more so for myself.
Yeah.
How I wanted to see Ras Nasi coming to the site where Taguda Village would be in the future.
And was it a shrine or a tomb underneath it?
At that point, it was just a small clearing with a hole in the ground with stairs, so it's not really... I didn't really say what it was. I think if I had to guess, I didn't fill in the blanks yet, but if I had to guess, if I had to right now, I would say it was just maybe a place to stash artifacts or something while the Yuanti were out on raids or something like that. Just it wasn't a tomb until Ras Nasi went down in it and stayed. That's when I think it became a tomb.
Gotcha. So, as a player, when your DM gives you a vision, and if you haven't spoken about it before, it's not a planned vision. Sometimes when you awaken from that vision and your player, the other players are all huddled around you, it's hard to tell how much you're supposed to relay to them. It's hard to, how in depth do I go? Because you guys got to hear it anyway, obviously. You were
Right.
there. But as far as our characters go, Irame telling Quincy and Copernicus and Zavril what she just saw, that always, I get stuck there. So I come out of it, and I try to play it off like she is a little bit dazed, so she just says a few words relating to the vision, maybe the general important gist of it, and then moves on. But that's an interesting thing. It's happened to me both times where I'm not sure
What
my relay should be.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty classic in RPGs, tabletop RPGs, is that when one character gets information, do they automatically share is it assumed that every character has the information that one character has just received, or do you let that information be transmitted in game?
Yeah.
And I think both ways are valid methods of play, but it definitely has an effect on the character dynamics and the tension of the story. I mean, I think it's fine for characters to sometimes hold back little bits
Yeah,
here
yep.
and there, or even for the telephone game to play out in real time between the GM and the transmitting character
Yeah,
to the
I was
rest of the party.
I was actually just going to say that in our episode about Camp Righteous, my character 6 relayed information wrong.
Yeah, and that plays well sometimes. Yeah,
Yep.
it plays well.
She overheard a guard or someone speaking to a higher up, came and relayed the information to you and relayed it wrong, not way out of left field wrong, but definitely not exactly what was said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like maybe it's not such a great thing to always do like on purpose as a player,
Oh yes,
but I think doing it, playing it out and having it happen is just something that naturally happens
yep.
and works sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I'll go as far as my 2 cents on it would equate to probably both of those, and also a little bit in the middle. I think if there's ever a time to be retroactive, that's a good time to do it. And it happens all the time, like you could call people out, and most of the time it's in a playful manner, like, wait, did he tell you that? And be like, well, of course he would. There are certain situations where you just kind of go with what you think, go with your gut,
Mm-hmm.
And I can use that in a few different situations, to go with your gut thing. But in this particular situation, for example, if Zavriel used an ability to discover certain weaknesses on a creature and then didn't say anything as a player, and then the next round, the next person in line switches his game up to capitalize on that weakness, exploit that weakness. As a DM, I'm not going to call out any kind of metagame. I'm just going to assume that Zavriel had called it out, because I feel like that's a tactic that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think that's something that should be understood at the amongst the players at the table that you're playing in.
Right.
And so I think some people might treat combat differently than role-playing circumstances. Maybe it doesn't matter if you're in combat or role-play. I agree with you for the most part. Like, you could assume that the information's transmitted between the characters at one point or another. Like, these characters, I imagine anyway, them having conversations way beyond what we have as players in character. Mm-hmm. I imagine them having conversations around the fire, like
Yes.
Absolutely.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that information seeps through. But if you're going to keep a piece of information to yourself to try to figure it out, or maybe there's another motive that you have, then maybe play it in such a way that you're indicating to the people at your table, like, Arame's going to mention this, but kind of keep this other thing close to her chest.
Yep.
And I think that at least makes it explicit to the rest of the group. I'm not sharing this one thing.
Sure. And it's a two-way street, too, and it goes back to the retroactive bit. If for whatever reason you are a player and you wanted to hold on to that information and
Yep.
you just saw the next person in line use it, the player can say, "Oh, wait a minute, I never relayed that information to you, so your character doesn't know it." And it's like, and that I've never seen a person get upset about it. They'll be like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Right.
that didn't happen," and it happens so quickly. That's why being retroactive in situations like that, it doesn't change much, because it does happen fast.
No, as long as you don't wait 3 rounds of combat to
Right.
bring it up. Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
As long as you're on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's the other. I think for the most part, go with your gut, and if you're called out, you're called out. Oftentimes, it's just it'll be in a playful way, like, "Wait a minute, I never told you that," and then you can go from there.
Yeah.
It'll be cool. Other things, just on a quick note, that I also go with my gut on is dropping weapons and picking them up. We talked about this maybe, I think, off air more than on. I've always been of the class that if you drop your bow, draw your sword, and then after the combat ends, you don't say that you picked up your bow, I would never hold a player to that and make them lose their bow. I think as a
Right.
trained warrior or ranger, whatever your class is, it's instinctual. You're gonna go and retrieve your bow, maybe a few arrows.
I agree with you there, but I would add, I would have an addendum for the fact that dropping it should, at times, rare times, have consequences because you're dropping it for the sake of the mechanics and to be able to do something more quickly, maybe in your round. But not consequences in the sense that, I forgot to say that I picked up my bow, but maybe something happens.
Oh, if a creature picks it up during the combat.
Either
or
a
something.
creature picks it up or the floor gives way and you fall down a chute somewhere or
Right,
something
or-
like that. Like,
Yeah, or a spell, maybe a powerful gust of wind might be subject to blowing away or something. I don't know.
yeah, I
Could
mean,
get broken. You'd have to mend it
it's now
later.
subject to the environment.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
No,
That's-
I
that's
agree
what I was getting at,
wholeheartedly.
yeah.
Yep, wholeheartedly.
that's exactly what I was getting at.
It's all along the same vein. It's funny, actually, when you mentioned talking about how you assume that our characters are speaking by the fire every night and learning all these things about each other. It's funny to even consider that they're not and that they only know each other for the amount of hours that we've gamed. It's like,
Right.
funny to consider such a thing. Of course, they know nearly everything about each other by now.
It raises the question, like, what is Quincy doing when I'm not telling him what to do?
I think everyone has to have that kind of autopilot for their character that they picture that their character's doing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I imagine Irame's like talking with birds and shit. She's like, always got like a critter near her. She's all
Yeah.
googly eyed over.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'll have to spy on Quincy a little bit more.
Okay, so moving on.
Falling apart.
We're
Yeah.
covered. What else? What's next in the agenda?
So episode 44 ends with the green mist rolling in. We found out that the green mist was the mad monkey mist.
I like the name of that disease.
It's a fun one. I was going to say
More
in the
fun than a barrel of mad monkeys.
yeah. In the morning, the mad monkey mist came. It's like a lot of, I love alliteration. Brings me joy. And we use it in kind of a different way, but I didn't know if you wanted to use this opportunity to bring up the actual mechanics of mad monkey mist.
Yeah, I could
Something
do
that happens in the jungles of Chult.
By definition, the magical mist, and this is reading it out of the Tomb of Annihilation, if you guys want to open up and read along. A magical mist creeps through the jungles of Chult. Contact with this thin, in this case it's blue, all right, and I'll explain why I made it green after. This thin, blue, odorless mist can infect giants and humanoids with mad monkey fever. Dispel magic spell destroys the mist in a 20-foot square, starting at a point chosen by the caster within the spell's range. An encounter with this mist typically covers 1d6 such areas. That's 400 to 2,400 square feet.
Wow.
All right, a giant or humanoid that comes into contact with the mist must succeed on a DC 13 Constitution saving throw or become infected with the mad monkey fever. All right, the infected creature gains a random form of long-term madness.
Long-term madness.
So
Like
you
forever?
you would well, there's ways about it. You can roll that, and that there's a long-term madness table in the Dungeon Master's Guide that you can roll on with various effects, long-term lasting effects.
Question about the madness. Is this similar to the madness that was introduced in the Abyss?
Yeah.
Out of the Abyss?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is similar. Yeah, you'd roll on the same table.
The same table, okay.
Yeah.
So we're not completely unfamiliar
Yeah.
with madness.
Yeah, madness can be harsh.
While that's the actual mechanics of going mad and the mad monkey fever, that's not how we used it in episode 44 and 45.
Right. Yeah, no, we didn't use it like this at all. Let me see here. I'm just
So were we exposed to the mist?
We were, and I think I don't think it's fair to say we didn't use it like this at all. It did essentially sort of make us mad for a portion of time.
So pretty much what happened was I needed we had like last minute cancellations. Like obviously Copernicus wasn't involved in the episode. He had bummed out last minute. So I kind of had to scramble. We all kind of had to scramble to figure out.
This is episode 45. The Mist comes in episode 44, and then episode 45.
We kind of had to scramble, essentially, in a nutshell, and we felt because it was around Halloween time, we could be a little cheesy with it. But at the same time, I wanted to stick with, at least use some of the lore that was in the Tomb of Annihilation book. So I kind of altered the Mad Monkey Mist a little bit, turned it green, and instead of doing the exact mechanics with the Constitution saving throw, I instead of carrying on with our main story arc, I instead introduced another location, Mbala, which was in Chult in the Tomb of Annihilation book.
All right, so that's where we actually were when we ascended the staircase.
That's right.
We were in Mbala.
Yeah,
And that's a location that's in the material. That's not something that you invented.
Nope. So essentially, those mists for a brief time transported you to another location in Chult, Mbala.
To this woman, Nanny Poo Poo.
Yep. Nanny Poo Poo. You want to see a picture of her?
Yeah, I want to see Nanny Poo Poo.
Oh, she's a character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nanny Poo Poo for two.
Such a great name.
All right, so
There you go.
we're gonna put a picture of Nanny Poo Poo up there. But yeah, that's the.
I imagine her smiling more, like a little more light in her eye, like a flicker.
Yep.
She's in a pretty dreadful location. Mbala was covered in human remains, wasn't it? Skulls.
and skeletons.
Yeah. So that yeah, I didn't just make that up. It was also another excuse to bring another location of Chult into the show that you guys had missed otherwise, right? So, and I just kind of, between all those things, that's just how it landed, and that's what we decided to go on.
So we end up in Mbala with Nanny Poo Poo. And what the old hag says shook Quincy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nanny Poo Poo walks around and addresses all of us, all of our characters there,
Yep.
and gives us a little insight, says out loud some things that we might not always admit to ourselves and to our comrades. So no one seems to be too bothered by them, though. Maybe because a lot of stuff's already coming out. But Quincy seems to be a bit shaken, particularly when Nanny Poo Poo says, "A shame you've been touched by the darkness and claimed by another."
Yeah, Quincy, I think this is really disturbing to Quincy because this is an area of Quincy that he doesn't know about himself. And that she's sort of hinting at this means that he doesn't act with the agency that he thinks he acts with. And
Yeah.
maybe there's something that feels true about her words that he wants to know more. Like, well, what's going on? Like, this feels true maybe, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know what the cause is. He doesn't know what she means exactly, and he just wants to get to the root of it. And I think he spent the whole rest of the episode like, tell me what you mean. They're trying to find leverage to get her to tell him what she meant.
Yeah, I mean, as a player listening, even as a character, Irme listening, almost it sounded so foreign to her that Quincy would be touched by darkness. We have an undead hunter, and we have Copernicus, who's a pretty dark character in and of himself, and she definitely has never thought of Quincy as having any kind of darkness. And I kind of interpreted it as a darkness you didn't know about, maybe a little bit of a madness that you didn't realize you had.
Yeah, well, generally he's a naive young man, and he's, getting to know the world a little bit and getting to know that he's not naive in the sense that he thinks everything's rose tinted, but he's maybe naive in that he still has a positive and optimistic outlook on how people can be moving forward. Like, people can change, people could still do the right thing. There's still good in everybody. Like, he maybe still carries those kind of naivetes. But as far as him thinking that he himself, there's something inside him, when he's always tried to be the best Quincy that he could be, maybe is a little unnerving.
That brings us to the fact that Nanny Poo Poo asks us for a favor. She asks us to handle some creatures that have been driving her crazy. And what we often talk about motives with our characters and why we would do something we wouldn't normally do and how we fit our characters' motives and long-term and short-term goals at hand to keep us while simultaneously still staying on the adventure track.
Right.
And this was a situation that I found interesting because I don't want to do this, but we have to do this because I need to know more type of situation.
I don't know if we want this or not, or how to cut it in, but I don't even think it's a dark little secret that Quincy's holding. It may be something that's external in Quincy's life, something that he's sort of I don't want to say victim of, but maybe circumstantially involved in, that he doesn't know he's facilitating.
Maybe your lead with the map is something darker than you
perhaps
anticipate.
Perhaps.
So we go off and we do this creature's bidding. We do this woman's bidding. We take care of these creatures. What were they called? The creatures?
Terrafolk?
That was an interesting situation when we were talking about the Terrafolk because they were kind of terrifying. And, I was all about just taking care of them and leaving. And then, but I don't know who brought it up in game, but someone brought up, like, we're just going to kill these things for making noise.
It might have been Quincy.
And then I was thinking, is it because their name is Terrafolk? Like, they have folk in the name, like they're people? Like, it humanized them or something?
See, I was thinking you were going with terror, like terror, dehumanizing them. Like,
yeah.
Does that make it easier to kill them?
I don't know. Well, if you look at the creature, you can assume Terra means pterodactyl.
Right.
But then you call them folk, and they're like they're like the dinosaurs.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of different creature types in these fantasy worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And just because something looks a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. And
yeah,
like you said, ultimately, she asked us to take care of the noisy neighbors, essentially. And our solution is what? To go kill them?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things there I think that we can consider is we sort of knew because of the situation that this was an opportunity we were only going to have once. And I think that forced our hand a little bit. We didn't know. Could we have gotten stuck there had we not done this bidding for her? Could we have fallen out of her favor and she could have become extremely dangerous? We didn't know. So I think there was a lot of things that kind of forced our hand to dispatch those creatures.
I would agree. I just would also say that even saying all that, we definitely acted a little rashly, or maybe
too quickly.
Maybe, yeah.
To go along with the whole thing.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, definitely,
We had just been transported. We just spoke to a woman that knew things about us that was impossible for her to know about us.
Perhaps the mist itself.
Yeah, the mist itself.
Had an effect.
Yep.
Under normal circumstances, if you guys were to come across Mbala, if your journey led you there, I think Chuck's route would have been the more... I think we would have expected that. I think there would have been a little bit more of a back and forth about why these things are there. You know, what's going on. We can't do this without at least digging into this.
Yep.
But given the circumstance that you were in Omu, the mist came, and, you know, even metagaming a bit, it was just a kind of a fling one-off thing. That had to have bled into the
Decision making.
interactions
Yeah.
a little, you know what I mean? So I think, you know, all in all, it is what it is, you know. I think we planned for the night to be a little bit cheesy. You know, we even talked a little bit about maybe describing it as in like a black and white, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like you would see on the X-Files Halloween episode, you know, how it
Right.
would be in black and white, and, you know.
I think we had a lot of fun with it. Nanny Poo Poo was a great character. You obviously had a lot of fun fleshing her character out.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, she was. I love playing roles like that.
I think you play a good hag.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like a good hag. You know.
I almost want to write a fantasy movie just to cast you as
A hag.
I want to see you dressed up as the hag as well and do the whole. Because at the table,
finger.
it wasn't just the voice. You were like doing things with your
Yeah,
hands.
you took on that hag
Yeah,
character.
absolutely, your facial expressions. You're good.
I had
He's
to
a hag at heart.
I had to
You're a
bring you
hag.
into it. I had to bring. I couldn't capture the moment without
Yep.
doing that shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah, it was really
even
good.
for myself, I couldn't play the character without physically playing the character.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It made me like I wanted to figure out what my heart character was. Like, what is my heart character?
I've got a few.
Yeah.
Uh,
So after doing Nanny Poo Poo's bidding and taking care of her noisy neighbors, we get a pretty awesome prize from her.
healing potion.
Well, no.
I know. Just,
Did we get? Yeah, we got little vials of weird stuff.
they're potions of healing, but like not. They're like the next tier up.
Tear up.
Right?
Okay, I thought I was
You
thinking
just
more
never
like
pa-
cure
you-
disease or
Yeah,
something.
you guys just didn't pass. Your,
Yeah, that's right. We didn't pass
your
the.
Arcana check
Yep.
to identify them. I mean,
Okay.
that's what they are.
So the prize essentially was a resurrection. She essentially offered that we could bring someone fallen to her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such an enormous thing. I remember talking about how expensive and the materials needed to resurrect somebody. And I couldn't figure out. I was like, why would John give us such a thing? Like, that doesn't seem like something he would do.
I wonder also if we have to use this resurrection, if we'll end up having to travel. Will we be able to just transport to
Well,
her?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, is it going to be so hard to get to this woman that makes up for how awesome the prize is, that balances how amazing the gift would be or the reward was? So either I was thinking it would be extremely difficult to get to Imbala and Nanny Poo Poo, or that maybe somehow the death curse wouldn't even allow a resurrection, and so it wasn't
Right.
even a gift.
Right. So that is a question.
Yeah.
There.
Because of before talking about it and knowing that Imbala was actually a place in Chult and that we had just been transported on the same plane, I thought, well, maybe this is a different plane of existence where the death curse has no reign and she would be able to resurrect us here.
Or it
Then
could be like an Aladdin situation where bringing back the dead is not quite what
Yeah.
you want it to be.
and then
Yeah,
but then
I will say that, and this might squash some of that anyway. Is that I didn't. That's not something that I added. That's something that is written into the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. So you brought up the death curse. You know, clearly if they added that in there, then it would be incorporated into the death curse. That's also written in there. So
I imagine there's a loophole then, or it's not a true resurrection.
Yeah,
or some
there's-
kind of animate dead, or
Yeah,
Right,
there's a
and there's-
loophole, or someone comes back like Khal Drogo.
Yeah, it's written to
kind
where
of
just
undeady.
sad.
Undeady.
it's written to where it works, right?
Yep.
I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
and that's pretty much all I could say on it. You know, I still want that to be an option. That I want those details to be unveiled should that option come to the forefront. You know,
Right,
if one
right.
you might not even take it. It might not even be, you know, it might not even be a thing, because if one of you dies, you might want that story to end and start an alt. you
Yeah,
know, so-
absolutely. Yeah.
I have about 4 alts ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I figured as much. And
I have a very rough idea of an alt that I'm excited to play, so I would be okay moving on, but it's not rolled out or anything. So yeah, we end leaving Nanny Poo Poo. We end up back in the city of Omu,
Yep.
and the episode comes to conclusion.
Is that where it ends?
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Within that building that we tried to patch up.
Didn't Quincy take necrotic damage at some point?
I was one. It's funny because I know you're fucking with me, but I had a dream or something. I've been taking these, like, what do they say they were? Magnesium. I've
Magnesium.
been taking magnesium supplements, and they make me have crazy dreams. And I woke up just like this morning, actually it was, and I was like, did Quincy take necrotic damage when we were in the place that the mist brought us to? For some reason, I had it in my head that we fought like these crazy undead creatures as well as the terrafolk. And I lost 6 max hit points. Anyway, we don't have to go
Rugged.
too deep into that. But I know that
Go down that rabbit hole.
right. I mean, I was expecting I was expecting to have to erase the maximum hit points. I know in Tomb of Annihilation with the Death Curse,
Mm-hmm.
necrotic damage is permanent, right?
That's right.
Yep.
So that's the end of Behind the Scenes 13.
Yep.
We'll
BTS
see you
13.
next time.
Lucky 13.
Yep. And this is the second one that we video corded.
Oh yeah, video
Yes.
on Patreon. We should like pop the links for Patreon every time we talk about it. You can just click on it.
I don't know how to do that yet. I don't know how to put links on there. Click on.
On YouTube. It'd be on YouTube.
Oh.
Like after